Hello everybody, welcome to DrawingWiffWaffles. Today I'm drawing Judy Hopps and Nick Wilde from Zootopia, and I'm super excited for this movie. I'm going to try and talk about what I'm actually doing though, first. So what I did is I was having a lot of trouble drawing them since they aren't exactly human, and I guess I would say my specialty is humans. Luckily they are anthropomorphic, so they're very human-y shaped, but they still look a lot like they're animals. So she's a bunny, and he's a wolf, and I started out just drawing really blocky shapes to try and get the idea of what kind of pose I would want, since I really wasn't sure what their bodies would look like in the end, since that's something I had to sort of like chip away at later. So here I'm actually doing a second pose for Judy. This is probably like the 6th time drawing her. It took me quite a few tries. That was in another file though. And her legs was something I was really having trouble with, since if you look at a bunny's legs, they don't really stand up straight very often. Like, I think when they jump, they straighten out a lot, but nowhere near like standing up straight. So eventually I got to this point where I was like, well, let me try and draw it more similar to a bunny's legs than trying to draw human legs. And once I started doing that, it actually started helping. So what happened was they were just much bigger thighs and thinner after the knee. I think with a bunny, the knee sticks out forward and then it comes back, and then the foot is almost like an extra knee before it becomes the toes. Does that make any sense? I don't know, but I had to make it more like feet, since that's the way it is in the movie. And then for the pose, I wanted them interacting, and I decided to go he looks like an anteater. I decided to go with him like playing with their head. You know how like it's really annoying when someone really taller, like a lot taller than you, comes up to you, and I'm short, so I've had it happen. Someone comes up to you and they just like think it's funny to just pet your head because you're shorter than them. So that was the idea behind the pose. So he's basically just like fluffing up her ears, and she doesn't really like it, so I gave her a face where she's kind of just like, seriously, dude? Because I'm a bunny. And later I do change his arm down there so that he is looking at his phone. Since they are living in a very modern society, they have cell phones and stuff, so I did want to incorporate that. I'm so excited for this movie. Okay, so when I first saw the first trailer, the one where it's like a white background and he just walks on and he's explaining his world, well, Nick Wilde is the wolf, I was excited. A lot of my family was a little bit more like, that looks kind of lame, and I, from the get-go, really liked it, mainly because I really do like the Robin Hood, the Disney Robin Hood, with where the Robin Hood is a wolf, and his accent is so dreamy. He's like the McDreamy wolf, and I get a few people, they pick on me about this, about my weird cartoon crushes, so he's one of them. Robin Hood from Disney's Robin Hood is one of them, and Nick Wilde reminds me so much of him, even though he doesn't have the like accent, but I really like that about it. So I was already gonna see this movie, and it got me thinking, in Robin Hood, it's a bunch of people, bunch of animals, living in a society of all animals, so it probably isn't, mentioned in the story, but technically, if Robin Hood is doing more like medieval times, this could still be the same world. It's just progressed a lot farther to modern days. So technically, Nick Wilde could be a descendant of Robin Hood in some way. Maybe I'm just overthinking it. But anyway, let's get back to the drawing. There are quite a few sketches in this. Like I said earlier, it took me a while to get the proportions right when it came to Nick Wilde and Judy Hopps, mostly because I don't draw animals like ever. So it was one of those things where I had to keep trying over and over and over again until I got something I was happy with, which is weird because I usually get pretty lazy when it comes to like restarting things. But I think just the fact that I was really excited for the movie and and that I had to have a video done by this week, it kept me going. Different people have different things that keep them motivated, and I think those two really helped me out. I gave his eyes like a little, so he was like looking down at his cell phone, and I like dropped his eyelids a little, but it made him look, I don't know, a little sketchy, and I didn't like it. So I do get rid of that. Here's his eyebrows. Just working on the line art. There's his cell phone. I had a lot of trouble with this hand. I kept like looking down at my own hand, grabbing my phone, seeing what it would look like, and it just didn't look right because he only has 4 fingers, so he has a thumb and 3 fingers. Yeah. that's right. So it just looked really silly. It just looked like I didn't know what I was doing, mainly. I think that was the biggest problem, is it just looked like I'm missing a finger, but that's as many fingers as he has, so I couldn't just draw in another one. That'd be extra weird. Eventually I got it. It just had to put all 3 of the fingers on the other side of the phone, I think is what I was doing wrong. And since I drew the phone in that angle, I think that's why I was having trouble. But eventually I figured it out. Excuse me. Anyway, I guess if there was going to be a theme to this drawing, it would be keep on keeping on, because I don't know if there was one thing about this drawing that just came naturally. Like, it was something I had to just keep trying for, and it was something that I really, really wanted to do just because I was excited for the movie and everything. So I'm glad that I kept going, because that's not something I usually do. But right now I am drawing, I'm doing the line art now. I actually sped up the line art a lot more than I usually do, only because this drawing took me forever, since I did have to keep trying over and over again at different things. So that's one of the reasons I had to speed up the line art so much, because this video was originally around 20 minutes, and I thought, yeah, I don't think I'll torture you guys with this sick voice for 20 minutes, so I toned it down a little bit. Now I believe it's more around 15 minutes? No, less than 15 minutes. It's more like 13, 12-ish minutes. And I think that's just a little bit more manageable, so that's what we're gonna go with. Anyway, finish the line art. Animals. Oh my gosh. So the line art's done, and then I started coloring it. I did go in with a thin line art this time, so I was prepared, because I was like, you know what, I'm going to go for soft shading with this one. Soft shading didn't end up working out quite like I thought it would be, only because the animals and their fur on their faces is very, very textured, and there's a lot of different colors that go into the face of, like, the bunny. Like, you'd think if you looked at her, she's just a gray rabbit, but there's some brown tones in there, and she even has, like, almost like a little of a blush tone to her cheeks, even though it's not like overly noticeable, but there's color difference of color in her fur everywhere, and it also like gets darker near the ends of her ears and things like that. So I did like use the soft shading technique, but I ended up using a harder brush to do it, if that makes any sense, and that helped make it look all furry. If you look at it right now, she looks kind of fluffy, if I do say so myself. Pat myself on the back. And there I'm adding more colored tones to her hair so that it looks a little bit more natural, just because when it went to white to gray, it was just too flat of a color, I think, is what so I just added more different tones to it. I also added a little bit more of reflective tones, so I added a little bit of orange where it would be nearer to Nick's body, somewhere around there. So I also added her pink ears and her pink nose, and then I colored in her eyes. One trick I have for coloring eyes is use a color close to the color of their eyes to shade the eyeball. I also usually don't like to use a completely white eyeball, just because it's too contrasty to the rest of the image. Like, the white just shows up, and if you ever have to like accidentally save it to the background, then and you need to take the white color and turn it to transparency. It also transparents her eyes, makes her eyes transparent. So I just like to use a little off white color for eyes. And it's also just, I feel like it's more appealing too. The white is just way too bright, and it's just crazy. Anyway, I'm adding some pattern to her pants, and I also added a little bit of reflected light of orange onto her pants too, just because the pants just weren't looking right. Like, I had them all colored out and soft shaded and everything, and it just, I don't know, they looked rubbery, and I didn't want her pants to look rubbery, so I just had to keep trying to get it right. Yeah, I'm still doing her fur, adding some shading to her vest and her, belt and arm thingies. She has a very cute design, I really like it. And then when I went over the belt with a white hard brush, just to add some details of like metal. Added some metal to her belt, since I saw that in the reference photo. She definitely had that, and it wasn't something that I had incorporated into my picture, and I actually was able to add it now, and it still looked alright. So it was just like a quick little tidbit, kind of like something you would go over in traditional with like a white gel pen. It's kind of that same kind of concept. Now I'm coloring Nick. He gave me a little bit more trouble than Judy did. his hair color is just much more interesting, I think. It's harder to get the orange color right, whereas with her, she was a gray tone bunny, so I just added a few more tones to it, and it kind of like built up together, and it looked pretty well. Him, like, every time I tried to use a different tone, it just looked too out there, and it had to be orange, and I still wanted to do a fox. And here I added, I changed his eyes back to the way they were originally when I said he looked a little sketchy. I was able to do it again, but this time over it, and I think it's just because I was overpainting. I was able to, I knew where I was going with it, and it was a lot easier. And sometimes when you do line art, it just looks a little, like, sometimes line art doesn't turn out too well, so I think that was probably the reason I didn't really like it originally, but now that all the color was in there, and then I went over it again, it looked okay, so I was pretty happy with it after that, and I left it that way. Now I'm just adding the patterns to Nick Wilde's shirt. It reminds me of John Lasseter. I don't know if you've ever seen John Lasseter, but he wears a lot of different, like, Hawaiian shirts, and I remember when I was a lot younger, and he always had a different Hawaiian shirt. Now, like, he's got money, and he can, like, have his Hawaiian shirts custom made, and they're, like, always, like, movie specific. But anyway, just coloring in Nick Wilde's shirt just made me think of John Lasseter, and he's a pretty cool dude, if I do say so myself. I think it was around this time that I actually was like, why didn't I just humanize the characters? I would have saved myself a lot of trouble, like if I had just drawn Judy Hopps and Nick Wilde as humans, you know, doing maybe the same pose. And then I was like, you know what, I'm still glad that I went for it, because it's just so much more fun to me, like, to try something new. Like, that's not something I do every day, and, you know, I think it's very good and important as an artist to try something new. And also, since I was drawing animals and not humans, like I would usually do, it also helped me, like, expand my style a little bit, so I had to, like, look more at the references and try to copy them a little bit more than I would usually do, like, if I was drawing them as humans. So I think it, like, helped me expand different ways to draw eyes, and different ways to draw hands, and different ways to draw that wolf mouth. Like, look at that thing. That's huge. I've never done that, but I have drawn my dog before, like, not well, but I've drawn my dog before, and I've noticed how his teeth are, and, like, when I'm brushing his teeth, I see his teeth, so because I knew his teeth, I was able to draw the wolf's teeth, Nick's teeth, like, a little bit better. So it's, like, different things that you learn throughout your lifetime help you draw different things. Even if you're not overly paying attention to it, it still helps you, you know, in the future. Anyway, now I'm just using a hairbrush to, not a physical hairbrush, a brush in Photoshop that looks like hair, to color in his tail, and just add it all over the place, just to add more texture to the whole thing. And I also added his smartphone. I added a little bit of a glow, so it looked like his smartphone was on. You know, don't you hate it when someone has their phone on, like, super bright in a dark room, and it's, like, blinding you? I don't know why I just said that, but it just reminded me of it. Anyway, and then I also added just the word Zootopia up behind them in my own handwriting. Kind of made it look like the logo, not very much, but just a quick thing, and I also signed it. And then this is the finished illustration of Judy Hopps and Nick Wilde from Zootopia, which comes out, I think, March 4th or something in the US, so it's, like, not this Friday, but next Friday, and I'm super excited for it. I'm going to be seeing it. Let me know if you're going to be seeing it in the comments below, and whether you're excited for the movie, and what your favorite part was. Mine was the sloth so far in the trailer. Like, that was hilarious. Anyway, thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you guys all next week. Hopefully I'll be better. Have a delicious evening full of waffles. Bye!